Hello, neighbor. I'm Robert Burns, and welcome back to yet another edition of Sound Off Louisiana. Today is installment 6 of our feature interviews with former Alcohol and Tobacco Control Commissioner Murphy Painter. And this is one I've been looking forward to because, as Mr. Painter said to you in our last installment, he's going to be covering the federal trial today that took place in December of 2013. And as he pointed out, I did go attend the trial, and I'd never met Murphy in my life. All I knew was what I had read in the newspapers in the lead up to this trial, and they were not flattering, and that's to put it mildly. So I really did not think I would be spending very long at this trial, and I thought it was going to be that obvious. I'm just going to be blunt because of what I had read, and I think that is a demonstration of how the media can oftentimes not paint a very accurate picture. I'll let it go at that because I don't want to steal any of his thunder, but I will be chiming in from time to time about observations that I saw during this federal trial. So, Mr. Painter, how about you go ahead and give us your account of what all transpired at this federal trial in December of 2013.
Well, Robin, obviously I don't have a whole lot of thunder, but I guess I have some tracks and some sense of evidence of what took place and what happened, and that's what all this is about. That's never been said. But I mean, I just want to recap also because it gets a little confusing, I guess, in my mind where we were, where we stopped. But I just want everybody to completely hear me say a million jillion times, if that's what's necessary, that you know, I got indicted in May of 2012, and then I got going to trial in December of 2013. So during that year, during the indictment, we finally got a hold to the records that they were keeping from us, and what's real ironic is that I've never been given access to my computer that is supposedly so important in all of this situation. I got a copy of what they said was on the computer, and as I've stated before, I had over 4,000 files that were deleted off of that computer. Any evidence that would have given me any complete backing other than what I sent myself at home, which I should have done a whole lot more of. But I never thought that I'd have to protect myself from the top down.
Sure.
I had protected myself from the bottom up. But anyway, so now we're getting set to go to a trial where obviously, you know, my future in my life is certainly going to be compromised one way or the other, depending on the outcome of what's happening. And what Robert said about the media, the media never did portray anything in this matter that could have even said or given anybody any thought or idea that I possibly could have been innocent in this matter. It was portrayed by the Inspector General's office, specifically Stephen Street, over and over again. They never used the word alleged crime. They never used anything. Everything they said was if I'd already been convicted of these horrendous events that any normal law enforcement officer probably does 100 times a day. But all of a sudden it's a horrendous situation, and I'm such a bad guy. But anyway, so I went through 3 different lawyers until I got to the last lawyer that I wound up with, and Mike Fowler, and he was being assisted by Al Robert. And I don't want to go into a whole lot of detail about why I switched all that. I'm going to try to leave some of that for the book when the book comes out, unless it becomes an issue and somebody on here wants me to exasperate on it, because one thing that that has caused me all the problems in the world is that I will talk and I will say what I think and feel, or I can prove is the honest to God's truth. So anyway, so we wound up a week before the trial, and Mike Fowler didn't get this case until August or September. So he only had a month or so to prepare, and again, the main issue was, first that we did was file a motion to throw all this stuff out based on the illegal search and seizure with the fabricated search warrant. Now, I want, again, the scholars and the people to know and understand how this thing went down time-wise. We didn't know anything now. At this particular point, I'm going to trial, and we have no information that Shane Evans lied on the affidavit, or that Kelly Votaw fabricated or copied what he said, which was a lie that he put in the affidavit, that she had given him a statement that I had stalked and sexually harassed her. We didn't even have that information when we go into trial, but we knew the search warrant wasn't worth the paper it was written on, because of the circumstances, again, which some of you might have heard or get tired of hearing, was they had everything in their possession already. There wasn't one thing that they asked for in that search warrant that they didn't have already, that wasn't state property, and that they had access to and had already looked at and saw what was on or whatever else was there. So that was a complete fabrication deal. Now, we went through a hearing. The judge, who is deceased now, and unfortunately, and I don't have anything, want to get crossways with the federal judiciary too much, not in this deal anyway, but I felt like he made an error. He ruled, listened to everything, and he said that if we couldn't prove that the OIG's office deleted all of those files from Friday to Tuesday or Wednesday when they got the warrant, that he was going to allow it to stand, and that he wasn't going to get mixed up in arguing whether the warrant was right or not, because another judge had signed it, this and that and the other. I mean, there was all kind of argument or whether the OIG even had the right to get a search warrant, which I still stand today and say, and a lot of other people too, and I haven't heard of them getting any lately, but I don't even think they don't have the power or authority under law to get a search warrant. Their statutes just don't allow that. But anyway, so he ruled against us, and we go to trial the next week. Now, I don't realize till we go to trial. I think, well, Shane Evans is getting ready to get on the stand. I said, well, that's good. The first question we're going to ask him is to get him to explain to this jury why he got a search warrant for stuff he already had and everything. Well, I was told then that because we had a motion on that and the judge ruled the other way, that wasn't even going to be able to be introduced in this trial for this jury. So I mean, every block that could be put in my way to be convicted of something was put in my way to be convicted. Now, I also want everybody to understand, if you go online, go look up the Inspector General report that was issued in February of 2011 with their supposedly original findings of wrongdoing or things that I had done that they claim was improper. And again, there's not one word in there about alleged anything. Everything in there is cut and dry, that I'm completely guilty of anything that the Inspector General and any of his minions want to put on a report. But the main thrust of that report is which also became the main thrust of the prosecution, was that the Office of Alcohol Tobacco Control did not have the authority to use the computer system, the FBI system, and the state police criminal history records in order to issue licenses or to investigate licenses, to issue alcohol beverage licenses, and in our case tobacco licenses too. And so that was the main thrust. And I see another segment coming where I try to bring all this together finally, maybe after this, but I don't want to ruin our thunder on the trial.
Sure.
with this particular deal. So that's we go to trial, we start, I don't remember, I guess it was a Monday, because it was a full 2-week deal. Monday morning, you can imagine my anticipation and anxiety. I have my mother there.
Yes, you did.
A good group of my family and friends that show up to support me. And the first thing is what side you sit on the table and this and that. Well, obviously they done jumped up and got on the side real close to the jury so that they could be close to the jury. We stuck on the other side. So I made the decision at that time that I wasn't afraid of this jury, and I chose this route, and I wanted to do what the Constitution allowed me to do, was have a trial by jury of my peers, because I knew damn well I wasn't getting any break from the supposed government that I'd risked my life for 30-some years at this point as a law enforcement officer. So I picked a spot and turned my chair where I could look at the jury. I didn't care about the judge. I didn't care about the prosecution. All I cared about was those 12 people, 13 people really, with the alternate on that other side, who was a wonderful broad range of average American citizen people. I mean, I can't say enough about how great the American system of justice is when you finally get to utilize all of it. Now, let me bring another thing in, Robert, just for the hell of it.
Sure.
One of the things they threatened me with was that the Baton Rouge, the Middle District United States Attorney's Office had a 91% conviction rate on cases that came before them.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I was putting in jeopardy, was that I had 91% against 9% that I was going to be found not guilty or convicted in this thing. And I promise I'm a law enforcement officer from the day I took an oath, and I still want to be one. I still think like one. But it's real easy to have a 91% rate when you fabricate stuff, or you bring up, you charge somebody with 43 counts of poppycock, and then you sit there and tell them that if they go to trial and found guilty, that they're going to get the maximum because they made the decision to go to court and let a jury hear it rather than the other side down the line. And the other part of that is like in my case, 43 counts, and then they come there and wave and say, oh, look, all you got to do is plead guilty to 1 count, and you're going to get probation and go by the wayside. No big deal. Well, I mean, your life's ruined regardless, one way or the other, and a lot of times it becomes an economic decision as to whether you're going to be able to do this or not.
Can I just ask, do you think they banked on that?
They didn't bank on anything, because in my opinion, they were going by the seat of their pants.
Okay.
The Inspector General's office was given the job of running me to protect the General Administration's decisions on that, and also compile with what was going on in the alcohol beverage industry and their desire to get that support for him to be President of the United States somewhere down the line.
Now we're cutting right down to the chase.
Now, they didn't realize what was going on in the office. It was a perfect storm. I had high rank or high political people inside my office that was that were utilized in the system to benefit a certain different group of people, which was against everything that I'd been there working for 15 years. And I was, if I would have I got let go Friday, if I'd have been able to come to work Monday morning, all that would have cleared up. I had all that resolved, and after all this, all that disappeared. All those other things I talked to you about, those other issues that if, you know, somewhere down the line somebody wants to get mixed up in the middle of talking about them, or maybe we'll do that after this segment in the next go round. But I mean, it's unbelievable what took place with the Country Music Fest situation as far as this so-called general administration all wanting to do the right thing and make the right things happen and everything else. The deal with the Superdome and all that other stuff. It's just unbelievable that could have gone down. But be that as it may, now we're here for the trial, and Robert reiterated. I done said it 10 times before. I never knew him from anybody in the world. He popped up after the first day. I mean, I saw him in court, wondered who in the hell he was, what side he was on, or that kind of deal. And after that first day, when he come up to me and said, you know, and he respectful as can be, not that I deserved it maybe, but Mr. Painter, and his mother was there with him.
She was through the whole trial?
His mother was there with him and said, I came here expecting to stay 10, 15 minutes, an hour at the most. According to the news media, you were a dead fish in the water. You know this was going to be nothing but an effort in futility in your part that nobody could understand why in the hell you would ever want to go to court and fight these people, because you're already guilty. It's already there. Everything's in the news media, but he said I haven't heard one word.
That's exactly what I said.
Not one word with their first 5 witnesses or however many they called that day. Not one word of anything, and they're supposed to call their best witnesses first so that everybody understands why they're here. And whether he said this or not, it more or less meant he said that jury's got to be sitting there scratching their head wondering what the hell they doing here.
Well, I want to interject one thing real briefly. He mentioned Tom Bolton in an earlier segment. Tom Bolton, I knew him from the Inspector General's office, and we were out in the hallway. He was going to be called in as a witness, so we talked with each other out in the hallway, and I just flat looked at him and said, I'm going to tell you one thing right now. I said, there is not one word that's being uttered in there that is resonating with this jury. And he was kind of taken aback. He said, are you serious? I said, I'm dead serious, and I meant it. I didn't want to. I don't know get you up to that, but that's what I told Tom Bolton.
I don't want these people to think that we making any of this up, or that I'm sitting here wham about this thing. This is the most bizarre experience, and how in the hell that it could go down in the United States of America under the situation of the rules and the laws and all that that's supposed to be in place today. It is a very confusing and situation, and as a law enforcement officer, it puts me at a very odd situation to where I again eat, sleep, and drink that, and want to make sure that the system works and that the right people get put in jail and all that stuff. But
sure,
it really is scary. And when you start hearing about people saying that they were framed, or people saying that they're in prison and they're innocent. This certainly has changed my opinion greatly as to the possibility of that, and especially since everything has got so political in the last 10, 15, 20 years. And all political because of economics. It's all about money, and that everything here is about money in its same way. But okay, so we start the trial. Tom said, you know, we had 4, 5, 6 witnesses, and just to lay things out, they had opening statements, and you know the opening statements was they told the jury how bad a guy I was, and all these horrible things that I'd done, and what they were going to prove and not prove, and this, that, and the other. All in all, in a 2-week trial, and I don't even want to think about how much money that cost. I mean, I've heard somebody say it was $800,000.
I think that's conservative.
That the government spent on this. And again, the only people that investigated me and the only people that brought these charges to the U.S. Attorney's Office was the Inspector General's office that I had a lawsuit against.
Yes, a civil lawsuit.
A civil lawsuit against, with all the documentation and everything to prove that they'd made everything up to start with before it ever got into any criminal situation. And those are the only people that are there supposedly throwing rocks at me, or the people that I have a lawsuit against and been denied so far the opportunity to pursue that because I'm mixed up in a criminal matter where they have me, you know, supposedly hung by the neck until dead and going away for the rest of my life on these so-called charges that they're making against me. But in 2 weeks, the federal government called 28 witnesses against me. 28. Now, Robert, we haven't rehearsed anything. We haven't talked anything on purpose. I didn't, you know, want anything blanched or whatever along that line. Did any one of those witnesses, now, you know, certainly there was some situations that, I mean, my mom was sitting there listening to the whole thing. I was not scared one iota of her hearing anything that came out of anybody's mouth. And I told her that. I said, Mama, look, I want you there because I don't want you dying or going anywhere thinking that I did anything that I wasn't supposed to do. I want you to hear it from those people direct from their own mouth and see what I've been telling you is the truth. So anyway, did any witness of the 28 show, say, or prove anything, any allegation of any wrongdoing that I'd supposedly made, other than what the Inspector General, Stephen Street, Tom Bolton, Shane Evans, Greg Farries, other than their opinion of what was right or wrong?
No, and I would take it a step further that I think common sense would dictate you've not got a favorable situation from a prosecution standpoint when you have witnesses on the stand that are literally on the stand essentially apologizing to Mr. Painter for this thing having gotten to the level that it's gotten to. And I'm deferring to him, so like I said, we haven't practiced anything, so I don't know what he's going to say in terms of some witnesses he may want to pull out and talk. I know you're probably not going to cover all 28 of them, but you're welcome to if you want. But I'm not going to make specific comment on any specific witness at this time until he would bring one up. But I'm just telling you, I will say the first witness, and because like he said, and let me just say one thing, I have attended an awful lot of trials, but I tend to like civil trials. I'll be perfectly candid, this was the only criminal trial I've ever attended. But the nature of what was being alleged, as far as I'm concerned, borders on civil type activity. And so I had a strong interest in it. And so because I did not have exposure to criminal trials, like I said, I've been through a number of civil trials. When they finished with the first witness and there was a little break, I took the opportunity to telephone my attorney and I asked him, I said, look, I don't have experience in going to criminal trials. I said, is the philosophy that you put your strongest witness up first, or do you just do a gradual build-up? And he said, well, there's two schools of thoughts on that. And he said, but I subscribe to the theory that yes, you put the best witness on first because that's going to be the first impression made with the jury and it's lasting. And I said, well, if this was the best witness the prosecution had, I hate to see what's coming after this. I haven't even mentioned the name because I'm going to let you carry the ball on that. But I mean, it was incredible. And I'll elaborate if he wants me to.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to mention any witness's name that was what I would call forced to get mixed up in the middle of this, because I said this in one of the other deals, you know, why I'm head of a law enforcement agency, not any different than the state police that's going through all this BS, the OIG, who's not a law enforcement agency. I'm sorry, you're not a law enforcement agency. And the city police or the sheriff's office or whatever else that runs tens of thousands of checks, background checks, driver's license checks every day, and all of their stuff is secretive. All their stuff is cannot be exposed. But Stephen Street makes the decision that all mine, and when I say mine, I'm talking about the agency. All of a sudden, all of those are public record or public knowledge for everybody to see, and to try to make some kind of thought process that there was something wrong or possibly screwball with what the hell was going on in that situation. But anyway, let's to the witnesses, and the first witness that I want to bring up and is they brought two witnesses there supposedly to prove that we didn't have any authority to run criminal history checks or driver's license checks or anything along that line using the state police computer system or the FBI computer system. They flew somebody in from Washington, D.C. to talk about the FBI system, which the FBI system is a state police system, because all that means is that information is housed within the state police computer. So anyway, my recollection, and I could be wrong because time was not in my favor during those 2 weeks, I promise you, because I wasn't cocky. I mean, by no stretch of imagination. I was being run over by a freaking freight train, and I kept trying to figure out where in the hell the brakes were on this thing, or waking up and saying that it's a bad dream, and all them oaths that I took to do the right thing for the right reasons would come into play. But obviously some other people didn't take them same oaths. But anyway, so the first witness was the state police supposedly expert representative that they put on there, and it seems to me in retrospect that she spent 2 or 3 hours on the stand.
She did.
And I mean 2 or 3 hours.
And she was, if I could interject, she was quite condescending to everyone in the courtroom. Everyone.
2 or 3 hours, and every word out of her mouth and every question by the assistant U.S. attorney was, did ATC have authority to run background checks and driver's license checks for licensing purposes? Now, 3 hours is I'll live with that, and when she got finished, I mean, she was emphatic.
Very.
Completely emphatic.
She said, what I want everyone in this room to understand, as if we couldn't interpret. I mean, to me, that's directed even at the judge. Go ahead. I mean, she was very condescending.
It was unbelievable. And it was more unbelievable because I'd been in law enforcement for over 30 years, and I knew every word that was coming out was BS. But anyway, so when she finished, you know, my lawyer gets up and he hands her a piece of paper that looks something similar to this, and says, "Let me ask you something. You're the expert, right? There's nobody else that can come here after you and say that you made a mistake, that we didn't understand what you said, or that they come and clear up what you said. You the one sole stop expert. Nobody can go any further than what you said." She said, "Well, that's why I'm here.
That's right.
That's why I'm here, because I'm the expert. I know everything about this, and I'm here to testify." Okay, so you say that you the expert, and you say that ATC has no authority to use that computer system. That's correct. Okay. So he handed this piece of paper, and I'm gonna read it to you. And just for clarity, this says 2019 version, because that's just what come off the computer, but it says down here, acts from 1995 of the state legislature, which is when it was passed, and that's a whole nother story, when we transferred from state police to revenue. But anyway, it's a valid law. It's a valid law from 1995, and it's still valid today. Criminal records access. Now, this is in the alcohol beverage law.
Yes.
It's not in the state police law. It's not in the FBI law. It's in the alcohol beverage law, which I guess they just didn't happen, which is unbelievable.
Yeah.
That anybody could even conceive that they didn't know anything about it. But let's just go that far, okay? Criminal record access. The commissioner, which happens to have been me,
You.
and duly commissioned officers or agents of the Office of Alcohol and Tobacco Control are authorized to have direct access by means of computer interfacing to criminal history records maintained by the Office of State Police for the purpose of granting, denying, or any other action on an application for a permit or for revocation, suspension, or other action on a permit previously issued. Now, I don't know how more emphatic that you can get than that, but I mean, when she read that to the jury.
And it was also placed on what's called an L mode. It was also placed on an L mode where the jury could actually see it as well.
When she read that to the jury, 3.5 hours of BS went straight out the window. And that lady had been a law enforcement officer with the state police or state police for a long time. I don't want to throw no more rocks at the state police today than they're getting thrown at them too much now. And I'm sure she was coached and forced to be put into that situation, that if she wasn't there completely on her own accord. But the fact of the matter is that basically 3 hours of testimony was BS. There is no way in God's earth that the Office of Alcohol and Tobacco Control did not have access, legal 1,000% access to those computer systems and databases for the purpose of law enforcement purposes and for the purpose of issuing and denying or checking background on license applications to see whether those people are telling the truth or not. Now, so like Robert said, I mean, this was one of their first, if not the first witness that they called, and I mean, anybody else at that point would have rolled up their books and went home, I would have thought, from that point of view. But then for the next...
And let me just say one thing before we move on from
Sure.
her. She tried, I think, to recover from this, because as you can obviously tell, I know y'all, the audience was not there, but this was pretty devastating. She said, well, we have an internal policy that would prohibit what took place here. Well, Mr. Fowler he's one of the sharpest people I've ever met. I'll just tell you that. He's also, I don't know how the man had the energy to do the things he did. I got tired just watching him and knowing what short time frames he had to recover from one witness to the next and be back in a couple of hours or so, and just, I mean, he was phenomenal. But he looked at her and he said, well, let me ask you this. He said, does a state statute, and again referencing what was on the MO, does that trump your internal policy? And
what did she say?
She had to say, I guess it does.
She said, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely it does. and so, I mean, and again, I'm going to share with you the inside. I mean, everybody's supposed to have secrets, and you're not supposed to make fun or whatever else. But in all fairness, I'd been in that agency for 15 years. And it was the bastard stepchild when it was at state police, and it was a stepchild at revenue. Nobody, because it's a hot potato. Everything that goes in and out of that place has a tendency to have a stink to it because somebody's trying to get you to do something you're not supposed to do. It's a tough spot in order to be in. And in all fairness, nobody cares about it. They didn't care a whole lot about it until 1996. under the Foster administration when he gave us the power and the authority to put some stuff in place, and that'll be the last segment that I want to share with everybody so they understand what the hell we did and why we were doing things. But the bottom line is, that lady and nobody at the state police gave a damn or even knew what alcohol and tobacco control really did until they had a friend that had a liquor license or something with application, and they were trying to get them, or video poker license application that they were trying to help somebody to get. Then all of a sudden they call you and want you to do something. Other than that, they had no clue what that agency did, had no clue what our basic purpose was, because in the old days all it was a place to stamp stuff and push stuff through depending on what political machine was in place, or who the person was that was applying. But be that as it may, okay, so that starts the deal of the trial. Is their first witness is shot down in flames like the Zeppelin that was first blew up and went down in Hindenburg, went down in flames. But okay, so how do you recover from that? The next thing they call, or they start calling different people to watch, but the OIG investigators came in and gave their, now they in sequestration, so they don't know, and I mean they come in and basically say that the state police told them this, the state police told them that, and they said this and they said that, and they got this information. But I want everybody again to understand that up until I got indicted, a year and a half, almost 2 years after they run me off, not one person, not one investigator ever went and knocked on anybody's door and said, hey look, I'm investigator so-and-so, I'm investigating this real deep serious crime here that Mr. Painter allegedly committed, and I need you to give me a statement of what took place. Nor did they take any notes that was ever available on those conversations, or they never recorded any of those conversations where somebody was supposedly making allegations against me or saying what I did and didn't do. Now, so all that reverts back. Shane Evans got on the stand, couldn't talk to him about the search warrant or whatever else along the line, but Tom Bolton, well, Stephen Street was called.
He was. That was an interesting period on the stand.
Got on the stand. He deferred to his people working for him.
And I want to state exactly what he said, because I think it's critical. He said, quote, I have no knowledge of this case. You're going to have to speak with my investigator. Now, if that's true, and you're supposed to be telling the truth when you're under oath, can you imagine? This is the head of the agency. This is the biggest case of his life. You can take that to the bank. And he's going to say, I have no knowledge of this case? You're going to have to speak with my investigator. And he wasn't up on the stand long, because once you say that, what's the point? But go ahead, Mr. Painter.
Well, and I mean, they didn't put a whole lot of emphasis on Shane Evans either in that situation, because he'd already moved on and went to the coroner's office. But Tom Bolton was the main witness, yes. And I made this distinction last time that he is the only one that gave information to the grand jury that supposedly indicted me. Not supposedly.
Well, they did indict. We don't have to use allegedly on that.
And if they called anybody else to the grand jury, they didn't use any information that those people gave them in this trial, because if they did, they would have had to give us the copy of their testimony. We got no copy of any testimony but Tom Bolton's testimony. Now, Tom Bolton got up there and they put some documents on out there of some driver's licenses or plates that I had ran, and I mean, it's all. If I had 200 hours to go through the whole scenario of the deal, but basically, I'm I mean, I'm want to believe that I am a professional, 100% criminal investigator. It's all I've done all my life. Right now it's 50 years of it. Studied every course that you could do to do it or whatever else. I took profiling courses at the FBI Academy, not to profile segments of people, whatever, but to understand why people are doing things or what they're doing. Other than the people that I had ran or allegedly ran that were close or people that I knew from Ascension Parish, all the rest of the witnesses that they chose out of 733 people with that checks were ran were tied to somebody in the OIG's office or on the other side. I mean, it wasn't, they could have chose a whole lot of other people, and like I said, I mean, I could blow this thing wide open with a whole lot of, because another thing that let me know for 1,000% sure that this was BS from the beginning was that when they started out with 22 or 2,300 checks that I supposedly made, and then at the end it whittled down to 733 checks and 312 actual background checks in 6.5 years. Well, the list that they gave was edited. I know people that I damn well run through that computer system for legitimate reasons that were missing off that list. So I knew that nothing was open here or above board from the get-go. But anyway, the main thing about Tom Bolton's testimony, which all he was mimicking of being a puppet for whatever somebody wanted to say, and I'm sorry, mate, but the truth is the truth, you know. And he got up there and put a bunch of pictures on the doggone board, and one of the groups, or one of the pictures was a neighbor of a lawyer that was ran, and I don't need to give her any more publicity. You can figure out who the lawyer was, and if somebody wants about a 10-hour show, I'll give you all the reasons why I had a legitimate reason to be doing what I was doing. But anyway, so they showed a picture to the jury of a car backed up against a carport, a closed garage, where the plate couldn't be seen from the road, or as any good investigator knows, any police officer, if you're investigating something, whatever is public, you have the right to be there. I could have got binoculars and from the road looked in a driveway and copied a number down and run it or whatever. But in this particular situation, they had the car backed up against the garage door, where you had to get out the car, walk on private property, and look behind the car to get the license plate. And they made, or tried to make, that jury believe that I had stopped, got out of a car, went on that private property and copied that license plate on the backside. And you want to say, go ahead and say. I mean, it was unbelievable.
Well, and they did such a good job. They did such a good job at what he just described. You may remember that I had said that I didn't have a blog at the time, but I was going home and giving Facebook updates, because there were a ton of people wanting to know what was going on in this trial. And the media, after opening statements and maybe one witness, they were gone. I mean, there was occasionally a newspaper reporter there, but for the most part, there was no media there. They did such a good job with
on purpose, the media wasn't there.
I have to believe. But they did such a good job at what he just described that they fooled me. And, you know, some people may say that ain't that hard to do. I don't mind downgrading myself a little bit, but they fooled me. And so when I wrote the Facebook deal, that's the way I described it, that he had done this, because that's the impression I got left with. So they not only did that, such an effective job of trying to convince the jury he had done it, they did convince me. Now, I'll let Mr. Painter elaborate about what happened the next day.
Well, obviously the witness was relieved that day of the trial broke, and the next day my lawyer got a chance to get up there in cross-examination, and the first thing he asked Mr. Bolton was, did you just tell that jury yesterday that this is evidence, this picture is evidence that you got from Mr. Painter's documents and this, that, and the other? And he, no, this is a picture we took.
Oh, I mean, I will admit to you, my jaw dropped. Go ahead.
So, okay, Mr. Bolton, are you telling this jury now that you have no evidence that Mr. Painter got on these people's property and crawled behind this car in order to get the license plate off of this vehicle? No, this is just where the vehicle was when we went to take pictures of the houses and stuff. So again, I mean, when a law enforcement agency has to use trickery and deceit and lies to try to convict somebody, maybe the wrong person is on trial. Maybe, just maybe. Think about that. So anyway, I mean, we've been hacking this for a while, and like I said, I can talk 10 hours on it and never hardly take an extra breath. I don't know how we want to separate it.
If you want to divide the trial into two segments, I think that'd be.
Well, I mean, I don't know whatever else we need to say at this time, or say.
I'll make just a couple of comments that were made by your attorneys.
Go ahead.
Again, I don't have the vocabulary to adequately describe the job that Mike Fowler did. And I will say that during opening statements, he said, look, as jurors, when you go back into deliberations, he said, I'm just going to make one simple request of you. And of course, everybody's going to be tuned in, okay, because he's placing focus on this. He said, please don't check your common sense out at the door. And when he went to closing arguments, he again said, when we began this trial, I made one request of you. Please don't check your common sense out at the door. So that's one observation I'd like to make. Another observation, going to the point of him saying the absolute sloppiness of the Inspector General's office. And let me just say this. As most of you know, I was a fraud examiner. We did work closely with the FBI when I was with the RTC. That was an agency that was basically a subsidiary, if you will, of the FDIC when a number of S&Ls failed. And I had to write up quite a number of criminal referrals. If I had to guess, it's around 37. But that involved institutions that were failed, at which there were criminal activity, or at least alleged criminal activity. And our goal, the division in which I worked, was to lay the foundation for filing what's called it's been a while now, D&O, bond claim, directors and officers. So our primary mission was to recover funds from illegal activity, fraud, embezzlement. But in so doing, we were required to fill out what's called an FBI criminal referral. Well, I'm just going to tell you, I, along with every other investigator in that office, we took that responsibility very, very seriously. Because in what you're documenting, you are making a very serious allegation against someone. And I can tell you, I spent 6 weeks at one institution in Gulfport trying to document alleged fraud that involved an apartment complex. And I took that, I mean, it's tedious work, it's hard work. But when you're making that kind of an accusation, you have an obligation both to the employer who employs you, as well as to the individual with whom you are alleging that this took place, to be extremely meticulous and well documented. And this got so bad, as far as the so-called evidence that the Inspector General's office had, that Al Robert, an attorney that he said was assisting Mr. Fowler. Now, the jury was not present when this got said, but I thought it got right straight to the heart of the whole matter. And he looked right at, now deceased, as he mentioned, Judge James Brady, and he said, Your Honor, this is not the FBI. This is the OIG. These people do not know what they're doing. That's a verbatim quote. Now, the Assistant U.S. Attorney, Ms. Patricia Jones, she took exception to that. But the reality is he told the truth. This stuff was literally slapped together on a napkin in many instances. And he's alluded to it. You don't even sit down for a face-to-face interview with these people that you're going to rely upon as your key witnesses to prosecute this man? The level of lack of diligence was astounding to me. And this is an agency that wants to call itself a law enforcement agency? This is not the way you conduct in solid investigations to lead to a conviction. And when you're making these kinds of allegations against somebody, as you can tell, it affected him and it will continue to affect him the rest of his life, even though he was ultimately acquitted. So
let me just interject there before you get off of that deal. And I mean, you're giving way too much credit to the Inspector General's office, okay? Because again, all those people, especially Greg Farris, who was the head investigator for the Inspector General's office, you're not talking about any rookie. You're not talking about anybody that doesn't know what they're supposed to do or not do. This was a haphazard investigation because they had to fabricate everything that their allegations supposedly were, and then they had no basis to prove any of it. But they had to go to route, and that's the whole point of another point of whatever it is now, that I still have a lawsuit against Inspector General Stephen Street.
that's great.
I'd love to take another 45 minutes and tell you about what happened with the lawsuit, and we'll have to do that next time, about what happened with the lawsuit I had against Bobby Jindal and his office in this matter. That'll be a good one for if they don't knock me off before I get to say it. but anyway, this whole thing was fabricated. I'm certain it's self-serving for me to say that, but I'm sitting here telling you, as a law enforcement officer, a professional 1000% law enforcement officer that's been accredited in every court level in the United States as an expert witness in criminal investigation, an expert witness on alcohol beverage law, expert witness on all that. And I'm not saying that to brag or anything. I'm just sitting there to tell you that hopefully that you think I know what the hell I'm talking about. These people fabricated this whole BS thing from the frickin' beginning. It was nothing but a fabrication. They utilized whatever political power they had to get the U.S. Attorney's Office to indict me on Tom Bolton's word of repeating the fabrications that they had done to get them out of what they think they can get out of a civil situation, to have to pay for what they done to me. That is the ludicrousy of this whole matter. 11 years. Now, everybody says, well, you know, that's tax money that's got to pay what was done to you. Well, guess what? They done spent, they ain't no telling how much. I'd want to say probably close to $1 million. Legal bills, which the law firm and stuff that has the case, that's a whole nother story too. In that particular deal, it's probably been paid well over $500,000 or more in 11 years in order to keep this thing from coming to a trial, so that people can hear just exactly what you just got finished hearing the last 6 hours of this deal. Of this kangaroo situation, and them still want to wave a flag and talk about integrity and how credible they are. And unfortunately, I'm not the only one. There's 2 other cases out there,
yes,
almost identical to mine, which is another thing that happened. and a whole nother, could be a whole nother segment of where finally the courts rule that the Inspector General has no First Amendment right to say what they want in a report or whatever else, and then hide behind and say they got a right to say that. They don't have the right to do anything. They ruined me. They tried to ruin Corey Delahousie, and they trying to ruin Mr. Lacaze, I think is how you say his name, that has a lawsuit against them also. And I would go and testify with both hands up on the 10 Bibles that they are
Lacerte, I think, but
Lacerte, yeah, Lacerte. They are an agency that serves no purpose other than some costume situation to try to make some ethics scheme say that you got some oversight on some kind of government situation here, and they the watchdogs, and other people that have them, they might be watchdogs. This agency is no watchdog of nothing. All they do is get mixed up with stuff for political purposes to save somebody's butt in a political situation, and try to ruin some good person in the meantime while they playing these games that they play. And I mean, if they want to do, let's do. I mean, you want to have a debate, let's debate, whatever you want. Hook them up. You can't, I mean, everything that you've done has no basis to me. Everything. Zero. It definitely was traumatic for my family and traumatic for me. And the sad part about it is that the scenario that's been portrayed and is still being tried to be portrayed by the OIG people is that it was necessary, and that they made the right decision in prosecuting me. And I sit here, and I've even been argued with lawyers saying that you wasn't found innocent, you were found not guilty. And I don't know about the Constitution that they work for, but the Constitution that I risk my life for says that a man is innocent until proven guilty. And I was innocent before I went to trial, and I was innocent after I come out of trial. There's no BS about that I'm not innocent. And time has proved that, and time is always the thing that tells the truth. And there's so many caveats, again, that have come out since all this stuff, and it can be 10 more shows if anybody's interested. We can do a series on it. But I'm just telling you, it's the most bizarre thing that I ever, and even worse than that is the crimes that they accuse me of under the federal system. 2 years after this, or 3 or 4 years after the deal with me, the Supreme Court finally ruled that what they accused me of wasn't a crime to start with. That they had no right even to charge me with that it's not a crime. And so that's how bizarre it is.
Well, and I'll make just a couple of concluding remarks, and then we will go ahead, because I know we've indulged on everyone's time, and we appreciate your patience. But if I recall right, 3 of the 32 counts that ultimately survived try to be prosecuted, they actually wanted to try to assert identity theft on his part. And Judge James Brady, I mean, he read them the riot act, and he told them he was not going to allow the jury to even deliberate those charges because they were so patently absurd. And so then it became an argument about, well, gee, are we going to let the jury know that those have been dismissed? And Mike Fowler had to stand and say, Your Honor, you have to. He said, I'm supposed to go and make closing arguments and not even reference those those counts? He said, I can't be placed in that position. So the jury's got to be made aware that those, and so the judge took care of those 3 counts. And so Yeah, I'm sorry, you look like you want to say.
12 counts.
Was it 12? Oh,
12 counts.
12 counts, okay. He's going to know better than me, folks, so if he says it was 12, it was 12. And the last concluding remark I'll make is obviously the next day, and I don't think it took but about, I don't know, an hour, hour and a half, the second day, the jury came back and they rendered acquittal total. And so now you would figure, okay, there's going to be news media coverage for this. And all I can tell you is Bobby Jindal had conveniently arranged, I think it was some ceremonial deal of some building somewhere that was being opened, and so all the media's over there for the next president of the United States. And I may be wrong on whether it was some building but anyway, they made sure they timed this to coincide with the announcement that this man had been acquitted. And so all you basically got out of the media was, oh yeah, by the way, Murphy Painter was acquitted today. Mike Fowler did look straight into the camera and he said, quote, "This is a case that never should have seen the light of day," unquote. And I don't think more true words have ever been said by any attorney. So with that, I think what he said right there says it all. So Murphy, thank you so much for this installment 6. Thank you so much for being willing to tell your story. You have as many more installments as you would like, going into the civil trial, going into any other matter that has taken place since that time in 2013. I'll be honest, it's been an honor to have hosted you even through these first 6 segments. Ever how many you want going forward, you've got them. So
Thank you, Rob.
thank you. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time for installment 7. Thank you again.